The All Blacks have completed a clean sweep of the French, 29 points to 19 in Hamilton, but it was a torrid time getting there. The French really showed up, made the ABs work for it, were leading throughout the entire first half. You just had a feeling that there could be an upset brewing. Now, don't forget, the All Blacks made 10 changes this week. Much was made of how the French rotated through their squad a week prior. Well, Razor pretty much pulled out the same tactic this week. If you were picked in the All Black squad, you were going to get some game time. That meant a debut for Brodie McAlister. It meant Ruben Love starting at fullback. It meant Anton Leonard-Brown rolling out at 13. This was a very, very different team to the clinical one that dispatched the French in the first half last week. And I got to tell you, there were some warning signs here as we look ahead to the Rugby Championship. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. We're going to pick apart this game and what has me a little bit concerned for the All Blacks. Certainly some pretty clear work-ons. But overall, you have to say a pass mark with flying colours. We got the Dave Gallagher trophy back and the French are sent packing down 3-0. But guys, there was drama even before kickoff. Luke Jacobson, a late scratching, looking a little bit groggy on the sidelines. The first thing I saw when I tuned into the telecast was Razor Robertson looking a bit grim-faced, chatting with Jacobson. So an immediate reshuffle was caused. The commentators were speculating that maybe you're going to keep Ardie Savea at 7, put Christian Leo Willie right in there at 8. Well, no, Christian Leo Willie went to the bench and Duplessis Karifi came off the pine to start at number 7, pushing the All Black captain Ardie Savea to 8. That was certainly fortuitous because I think Duplessis Karifi needed the minutes. Big shame for Luke Jacobson. Hope he's okay. But there was a bit of a silver lining to it. A lot of us have wanted to see Karifi start a game. We're going to talk about his performance, but good for him to get those minutes logged as an All Black. I got to say, Ardie Savea led a pretty mean haka. The All Blacks kicked things off with Kamade, a really spine-tingling, very synchronized addition. I just had goose flesh all over me. And, man, the atmosphere was electric in the Tron. I got to tell you, though, it felt like it was half French. I mean, when the French were hot on attack, there were chants of Allez les Bleus, just roars, guttural roars for the French. It felt like every French person in New Zealand congregated on Hamilton for this game. So look, it made for a great atmosphere. And, of course, the fans were happy because I believe the ABs have only ever lost one game in Hamilton. I want to say that was probably to the Springboks in 2009. See, I'm pretending I don't remember it, but yeah, that's pretty much entrenched in my memory. But, you know, they were happy to see the home team win here. But there were signs early on that the All Blacks lineout was not firing as it has throughout the series. You got to remember, it was operating at 100% efficiency throughout the first couple of tests. Immediately, a miscue from Samisoni Takiahau. Samisoni threw long, it went over the top to absolutely no one, except for a patch of grass. It bounced up for the French. So a little bit of an alarm bell ringing there. It was a pretty nervy opening 5 minutes for the All Blacks, but immediately one player that was noticeable in general play was Ruben Love, bringing a lot of energy from the back at fullback. He did have one mistake where he turned the ball over, but otherwise he made a line break early on and just caught the eye. Speaking of the line out, though, the French one was looking pretty good. It only took them 8 minutes to win some clean ball off the top, set up a rolling maul, and Le Garrec goes down the blind side. The French get first blood in this game. All Blacks were under all kinds of pressure early on. And I look at that start from the ABs, and I think probably they were disrupted by the late loss of Jacobson. And I also think you have to look at the fact that the French were soundly beaten last week, so they had a bit more of an emotional snapback. This was a case of the All Blacks needing to focus, get their heads back in the game, whereas the French pride was wounded, so it didn't exactly shock me that they came out all guns blazing. There wasn't much on for the All Blacks when they were running the ball, so it took a beautiful kick ahead from Will Jordan to give the All Blacks a foothold in the French 22, but even then the French D really looked up to the task. The All Blacks started building some phases, but it broke down. A pop pass from Duplessis Karifi to Quinn Tupaia was actually kicked ahead by a French player. The French rapidly moved downfield. they probably would have laid on a try here, but actually a knock-on from the French was the proverbial get-out-of-jail card for the All Blacks. But make no mistake, the momentum and the energy was definitely with the French in these opening passages of the game. And it wasn't just spark on attack and a good set piece. The French were giving the All Blacks a taste of their own medicine from the week before. Remember how Brodie Barrett and Will Jordan pinned the French in their own 22 with those beautiful angled grubber kicks? Well, the French did the exact same thing to us. They kicked for the corner. They got the ball into touch. Low kicks, plenty of success from this tactic. And the ABs were not looking too good in the territory stakes early on. Not only that, but just some, strange decisions and brain explosions from the All Blacks. Samisoni Taukei'aho finally found some rhythm in the lineouts. The All Blacks win one close to their own try line. However, Ardie Savea goes for a chip kick to Will Jordan from inside his own 22. Now, I'm going to just not come down too hard on this, because overall, the All Blacks' ambition must be applauded in this series. They have been holding nothing back on attack. Razor wants them to play with courage. If they see something, he wants them to try the option. There's that old saying, no risk it, no biscuit. I just don't know about a chip kick from inside your own 22. You want to talk about percentage plays? I think we can all get behind a 50-50 ball if you're feeling good on attack, if you think the opportunity's there. But really, what are the odds of a chip kick in your 22 coming off? 5%, 10%, 20% at best? And even then, what are you going to do? Make 5 or 10 meters? The chances of a breakout try, Will Jordan running the length of the field, are so minimal. So early mistakes from Ardie Savea, who also had a knock-on in the opening stages of the game, but he did roar back and was one of the best All Blacks on display in the last hour of the game. In the 21st minute, a much-needed riposte from the All Blacks. It was that man, Will Jordan, scoring his 42nd international try, but we have to give the plaudits to Cortez Jordan. He saw that the French were empty in backfield. They had all pretty much come up into the line. No fullback there. Cortez box kicked through beautifully. It bounced for Jordan, who collected it, scored a try. That was really much needed, a reversal of momentum. In the 23rd minute, the French number 10, Hastoy, he slotted over a drop goal, and I actually found myself applauding the tactic. I felt that was a fitting punishment for the All Blacks, who were making quite a few mistakes whenever they were in their own 22, and it just showed that the French were going to claw, scrape, scratch, do whatever they could to win this fixture, even if it meant firing off drop goals, whatever it takes. Just signs, though, in the 25th minute of the All Blacks' chemistry coming together, building up some phases on attack. The All Blacks actually got across the chalk, but the try was held up. But you had the little chip kick starting to work as a good tactic. We saw Will Jordan hack the ball through, get some good ground out of that. And I started thinking, well, now we're playing in the right end of the field. In the 28th minute, the welcome sight of Patrick Tuipulotu picking off a French line-out. That was good to see. I just want to single out Tuipulotu here. For me, he might have been the MVP of the match. He went 80 minutes, and boy, did we need his big body out there on the paddock. He also gave some much-needed solidity to the line-out along with Fabian Holland. The line-out just wasn't operating at the usual level, and you have to factor in that Tuipulotu was missing this week. Even if Vai's playing at 6 and he's not the frequent line-out target, he's still that third option. And when you have a viable third, even fourth option, that's what creates confusion. That's where you start to dominate in the line-out. It was pretty clear that the ABs were going to Holland or Tuipulotu. Yes, they threw to Savea at the front a few times, but they really had those two premier targets. I think the loss of Tuipulotu did hurt the All Blacks line-out this week, as well as the less sure-handed throwing from Taukei'aho and Brodie McAlister later. Clearly what you want to see is Cody Taylor at rake throwing the ball in. You want Scott Barrett fit. You want Fabian Holland out there. You probably want Tuipulotu at 6, and you want Tuipulotu on the bench. Now we have a good arrangement for the All Blacks line-out, and I am confident it will get back to the levels we saw in the first two tests. But make no mistake about it, this was the low light of the game for the All Blacks. But as I mentioned, Tuipulotu did pick one off, and the ruck cleaning started getting better towards the end of the first half. The speed was good. Turned into a bit of a kicking duel between Ruben Love and Hastoy, the French number 10. The French had a good long kicking game today. They really tried to pin the All Blacks down near their own back fence. And Hastoy probably won that kicking duel, put it into touch. The All Blacks threw the ball in and started counterattacking from their own 22, but it broke down. There was a penalty to France. And look, maybe the All Blacks caught the French off guard by running the ball back that quickly. I think they caught themselves off guard. The thing about this high tempo game is it needs high accuracy. Obviously, the pinnacle was the first half last week where you saw that high tempo, but it was allied with execution. You didn't quite see that same clinical execution in the first half this week in Hamilton. Cut to the coaching box and you see Razor dropping an F-bomb or two. That pretty much summed up how tense the vibe was at this point. The All Blacks win a penalty. They go for the corner instead of taking the easy three. They get a clean line-out win, thank goodness. Holland takes it, turns into a slightly raggedy rolling maul. All Blacks start their pick-and-go game, and Ethan de Groot actually gets over the chalk, held up. This was the story of the day for the All Blacks. Attack held up over and over again. Close but no cigar was the theme here when it came to the All Blacks finishing. Regardless, that forced a goal line dropout with just 20 seconds to play, and now we saw a much needed try from the All Blacks. This had me on my feet cheering. It happened after halftime. I think the clock was probably at 42 or 43 minutes at this point. Now, the All Blacks racked up a whole bunch of phases here, and they looked brilliant. This was a true purple patch for New Zealand. The main feature of this passage of play might have been a long, beautiful cut-out ball from Will Jordan to Sevu Reece, who made some big yards, but actually it was the incisions from Samisoni Taukei'aho and Patrick Tuipulotu who kept it moving, kept that ruck speed up. When they weren't carting the ball up, they were hitting the ruck. Those two guys were so important, getting over the gain line. Ultimately, the defense of the French narrowed, and it was the All Blacks who got it wide. ALB slid over. It was a big slide too. He started about 5 meters out. He even needed a little push from a teammate, but Anton Leonard-Brown gets in. Such a valuable try for the All Blacks because they were going to go in 19 points to 10 down. Instead, they go in 19 points to 17 down at the break. Much healthier deficit. With the mood the French were in, you felt they could have compounded that. I'm not going to say they were going to blow out the All Blacks, but you don't want to be down 9 to the French and give them a sniff at halftime, get that emotion bubbling. That was a little bit of an emotion killer for the French. They just looked a little bit deflated to let that one through, and it was a crucial turning point in the game. We saw a monster break from Ardie Savea not long after that. Damien McKenzie kicked through. He was really timing his kicks well at this point. The French were in deep trouble. They had to do a hasty clearance, but now the All Blacks had a foothold in the French 22. Time for some changes in the 44th minute. An entirely new front row comes on for the French, and Tafafanua, that hulking, very experienced lock, comes on. Meanwhile, George Bauer came on for the All Blacks. So the French activated their bomb squad. They immediately got some fruit from it. They won a penalty on their own feed. They were able to get down into the All Blacks half. They win another penalty, but it is a long angled kick, and this time they do not get the 3 points. At 49 minutes, Brodie McAlister comes on for the All Blacks. That's his debut at hooker. Of course, he recently relocated to Waikato from the south, so this was kind of a home game for him, you could say. And then also Fletcher Newell, who's been just brilliant at prop for the All Blacks, off the bench or starting. He came on also. In the 52nd minute, Duplessis Karifi had his shining moment of the game, a perfectly timed turnover, and you just saw the body language of Karifi change after this. His whole frame swelled with confidence, and I felt like that was the moment he got his footing as a test player. He's not the biggest man out there. You know, I looked at him in the defensive line sometimes, and I thought, how is he going to go against South Africa? But I do think about Quagga Smith, who's a similar size, who's so impactful for South Africa. This start will have done wonders for Karifi, but I do think he's probably best coming off the bench. But this was really a valuable turnover from him and a huge confidence booster. So now the All Blacks could attack. They get back-to-back penalties. The momentum is with the All Blacks, and we start seeing some nice flourishes like Ruben Love putting up a midfield bomb and regathering. Cortez Jordan does a box kick that gets charged down, but serendipitously it ends up back in All Blacks' hands. There's another break, another Ruben Love kick from advantage, and that leads to an All Blacks line out. The French keep picking off the All Blacks line out, though, and it takes a brilliant Ardie turnover to get the All Blacks out of trouble. And what you saw here was the All Blacks really faltering at the line out, but let off the hook by repeated French mistakes. When we go up against South Africa, Argentina, Ireland, England, there are not going to be that many mistakes made. This inexperienced French team, they let themselves down at times with their discipline, with their ball handling, and that let the All Blacks get back in the game. So in some respects, the French were beating themselves in the second half. All Blacks were good enough to capitalize on the errors, but I do really want to sound a note of caution here. The All Blacks were allowed to stay in the game because of French ill discipline. In the 66th minute, the All Blacks get a scrum penalty. Let's be clear, the line-out might have wobbled. The scrum still looked absolutely fantastic. Some monster scrums from the ABs. They get a penalty, so it means they can go for the points. But at 22-19 up, they're now trying to kill off the game, which I thought was questionable, but regardless, they go for the corner. They're trying to get that try to put this thing completely out of doubt. Fabian Holland collects it at the front. It turns into a rolling maul, and in the 68th minute, Dalton Papali'i goes over for a try, except it wasn't a try. The on-field decision was held up. There was no clear and obvious evidence that the try was scored. I believe it was a try. However, I'm wearing an All Black jersey, so how much credibility do I have? It just did look like Dalton got it down on a blade of grass with white paint on it, but I'm imagining that. I'm manufacturing that image in my mind. I accept that there was no evidence on video that was clear and obvious that he scored a try, but for all money in real time, to me, it looked like he scored one. What do you think? Kind of a moot point because the All Blacks won anyway. But, you know, if that had been the difference maker, if the French had somehow got up by a couple points and that try had been disallowed, you know, that would be the moment we'd be debating. It'll just fade into obscurity, fade from our memories. But that almost could have been the pivotal moment in the game, having that try held up. Tava Tavanawai comes on at 69 minutes, just what we need, another injection of energy. But Jordie Barrett, who was not even meant to be in the squad, a late call-up to the bench because of Rieko Ioane being ruled out with injury, ruled out with a hamstring a couple days before the game. Jordie Barrett is the one catching the eye. He just looks like he's in a different level of class. Clearly the first choice 12 for the All Blacks. This series has made that abundantly clear. So the All Blacks can't finish a damn try, but they are squeezing the life out of the French in the last 20 minutes here. They have all the possession, all the territory. The French are just absolutely trapped near their own try line, and the kicking is really good. None better than a perfectly weighted box chip kick from Noah Hotham. Looked like the All Blacks scored in the 74th minute, but Savea was held up. Again, this is the fourth time that the French hold up the All Blacks. You have to say that the finishing was really not there today for the All Blacks, but you also have to give credit to some unbelievable, spirited scrambling D from the French. But in the 75th minute, it gets sealed, and it's that man I was just singing the praises of, Jordie Barrett. He finally breaks through with a beautiful fend, feeds the ball inside to the debutant Brodie McAlister, who slides in. A huge cheer from the crowd, a giant cheer here in the man cave in Portland, Oregon. I was up on my feet applauding. Such a relief. And you have to say the All Blacks built patiently. They just kept going. This was a win for patience and sticking with it. Now, my issue is that they're not going to have that much possession and territory against a team like South Africa. But today, we will take it. The game was safe at 29-19. The All Blacks were able to kill it off. And there you go. That's how it went down in Hamilton. Let's go over the good and the bad. Start with the bad. Obviously, the line-out was an issue. However, that loss of Tuipulotu impacted these guys a lot. Samisoni, not as smooth a thrower as Cody. I think Cody Taylor remains the first choice rake for that reason. But Samisoni was punching holes all over the field. He was back to his best in terms of carting the ball up. So he's definitely a very good impact man. The lack of clinical finishing also was a bit of a negative. Yes, the All Blacks were able to get across the line in the end, but it was just from wearing the French down, more energy coming off the bench. But the All Blacks are going to need to be more efficient converting their territory into points when it comes to the Rugby Championship. The French were actually more efficient whenever they got into the All Blacks red zone. It took less minutes and less phases to score. So that's a work on for the All Blacks. Let's talk about the loose forwards, though, obviously disrupted by Luke Jacobson's loss. I am just not seeing that Samipeni Finau is the answer at 6. I was going to say the jury's out. I think the jury's back on Samipeni Finau. He's okay. He's fine. He's not a bad player. You can put him in there. But if it comes down to a shootout between him and Wallace Satiti for 6, even if Satiti wants to play 8, if that's his preferred position, regardless, he's a much better option at 6. I would even think maybe you put Luke Jacobson in there at 6. Yes, I like Samipeni Finau's height, but not the blowaway performance that we were hoping for. And maybe, look, that's putting too much pressure on him, but you just have felt that you wanted a statement performance from Finau. Haven't quite seen it yet. He'll stay in the mix. He's a capable starter. He's good. He's just not great at this point in time. The positives. Once it got going, I thought the kicking game was excellent, really trapped the French down in the wrong part of the field from their point of view. And no Brodie Barrett this week, but astute kicking from Damien McKenzie at times, good box kicking from Cortez Jordan, from Noah Hotham when he came on. So I would have to give the kicking a tick in the last 2 games after the All Blacks were certainly beaten in the air and off the boot in Game 1 in Dunedin. Huge tick to the scrum. It was powerful. It was a penalty-winning machine. Razor will be very happy with that. And a huge tick for Ruben Love, having just his 2nd game in the black jersey. Just brought so much energy, courage, daring. I thought he was a breath of fresh air at fullback, and I think we'll be seeing a lot more games from him in the black jersey. So guys, I'm going to sleep on this one, think about what it really means going into the Rugby Championship, assess where the injuries are at. I'll probably do a follow-up video analyzing it with a little bit less emotion, but fantastic that the All Blacks could clean sweep this series. They needed that. Definitely stamping their authority again. Razors off to a good start here in 2025, and I'm excited to see how they can build into the Rugby Championship. Don't get me wrong, the foundation is absolutely here if they can tighten up some aspects of their game. All right, guys, I haven't seen the Lions Wallabies yet. I'm watching it on delay. I'm going to do that next, and I will report back with my analysis of that game. So look out for a second video on this big bumper day on YouTube. But meanwhile, send this one to someone who loves rugby. Please like, please subscribe, and I'll be back for that Wallabies Lions recap real soon. Take it easy. Bye for now.